Hello, and welcome back to In Focus, the show where we discuss how creative outlets allow individuals to manage their mental health and share their stories. In this episode, we'll be talking about art through mental health and the effects of lockdown. To talk with us about this is Hannah Smith. So please tell us a little bit about yourself and your degree.
Hi, my name is Hannah Smith and I'm studying my third year of fine art at UCLan.
And what are some of the topics you discuss within your artwork?
So currently I have just finished a series. That series is called Monuments of Society, and that looks basically at different aspects of the cost of living crisis that has affected me personally. So I have 3 paintings. They're all massive paintings, 6 by 4 foot, and they are just different depictions of everyday life being reclaimed by a natural landscape, which is something that I did before in my work. I did a lot of landscape painting, but this time I wanted to include real serious topics being sort of engulfed by these natural landscapes.
Ah, that's very interesting. So what made you choose art?
Oh, well, basically, since I was a child, art has never really felt like a choice. It's sort of just been like a really naturally, sort of organically occurring thing with me. As a kid, I would just draw and I'd paint constantly, and as a teenager, I really sort of used art to sort of explore sort of boundaries and limits of what I could do. I did a lot of really scary sort of horror-based art, and I think that was just me rebelling at the time. And then as I went to college, I really wanted to focus my art in sort of a different way. So I did textiles, I did fashion and things like that. And that just sort of went by the wayside because I just thought, I'm only doing that for somebody else. It wasn't me that wanted to do that. So then as soon as I went to university, I was like, yeah, I'm doing art, just art, and I'm going to really focus it on it. And I just feel like, yeah, it's just been just one of those things. I can't imagine art being like not in my life, basically.
Well, you can tell you love it there. It's nice. It's a nice passion. So how has art impacted your own mental health, would you say?
I would say that it's a holiday for me. That's what I describe it as. It doesn't matter what I've done that day, how stressed I've been, how awful something's gone. As soon as I get home or I go to my studio and I sit down, my brain instantly engages with what I'm doing and it's focused, and every bit of outside noise or sort of internal monologue finishes, and it's like, I'm going to do this painting now, and that is my focus. And I just feel like it really helps me just block out the world. And in turn, with my artwork, I create these surrealistic type worlds of my own, and it's like something that I can control and have sort of, just a say in what goes anywhere, and it's like this place that I can just escape to. So I would say that my artwork, in terms of my mental health, it really is like a safe space for me to just sort of explore ideas and block out everything else, really.
It's so important, isn't it? I think everybody needs that.
Yeah.
For sure. So how did your artwork help you through lockdown then, through the pandemic?
Right, so basically, when the pandemic started, me and my 2 children, we had just recently moved, within 6 months, moved to the place that we were living in. We live in a little flat in the middle of nowhere. It's in a really rural area of the countryside, and we hadn't really explored any of the surroundings, and then all of a sudden lockdown hit. We were stuck inside, and we were allocated by the government 30 minutes a day of outdoor exercise, and we really took advantage of that. It was instantly like, right, we haven't gone to this field, we've not gone to this hill, we've not gone to this lake, this river, this stream. So in that 30 minutes, let's leg it, let's go and see what there is out there. And we really used that time, and it became like a really special time for us because we didn't really have a lot of time to spend together until the pandemic. So we'd go out and we'd explore these areas and we'd have a really nice time, and then we'd come in, and it was like this feeling of just being suffocated and trapped when we got inside, because it was like we were in this little tiny 2-bedroom flat, and it was like, and then at night I suddenly got this feeling of I just want to paint what I've seen. So I started doing these landscape paintings, but instead of them being sort of bog standard landscape paintings, everything's what you would expect. I really sort of played with it. I'd not really done a lot of painting before this, so I was really sort of challenging myself. I'd do really vivid sunsets, I'd do mythical characters and monsters and things like that, and everything was really sort of fantasy and surreal. And that, for me, at night, as soon as the children were in bed, I would do these paintings, and that, like I said, was like a holiday, and that really helped me sort of escape how trapped I was feeling and how suffocated I was feeling.
So you recently submitted your dissertation, so congratulations.
Thank you.
So what is it all about, and why did you choose to write about it?
Right, so basically my dissertation, it was Art and Psychosis Through a Looking Glass. That was the title.
Okay.
And it basically, I first started looking at the concept of art therapy. That was something that really interested me as a career. And then the more I looked into it, the more I realised that the people that could have art therapy as, you know, a treatment, they were in a very privileged situation, whereas either they could either afford it or that they had made it through the waiting list to receive it. So I then started looking at, you know, what was before art therapy, because that was something that came about in sort of the mid-20th century. And I looked into sort of mental health and how mental health support has changed through time in the UK from sort of the 18th century all the way up to the present day. And I noticed that there was a quick shift during the time that people were in asylums, where art was suddenly seen as a diagnostic tool for people with schizophrenia. So schizophrenia patients would be creating these really sort of imaginative, really vivid artworks, and psychologists were able to look at these artworks and depict what was going on with them inside their minds, and that was something that was really developed on. And I just found that so interesting, because for me, obviously, if you have schizophrenia, it's almost like you're seeing another dimension to everybody else. There's something else that you're seeing that is completely individual, completely personal, and no one else on the planet is going to experience what you're experiencing. So to be able to use art as this tool to sort of show the world what they are seeing and what is going on, I just find just so incredible and so important. So I started looking at case studies of these individual artists through time that were using their artwork, and also people that had a completely different art practice before their symptoms of schizophrenia came on. So for people, for example, like Louis Wain, an artist whose works went from being very sort of commercialized drawings of cats that we got him very famous, to then, after he had his diagnosis of schizophrenia and his symptoms emerged, was his cat drawings became really psychedelic, really imaginative, really colourful. And I basically explored that and sort of how important it was that these artists had a safe space to practice. There were people in my case study that didn't have those safe spaces, and their outcomes were incredibly different to the artists that did receive the support they needed. But the thing that I really touched on the most at the end of this dissertation was the fact that the support isn't there anymore. The support at the beginning of the 20th century just disappeared, and it became a thing called community care, where people had to basically fend for themselves within their community. And from then on, the only now ability to have these safe spaces for these artists that do have psychosis is for them to be able to afford private, you know, institutions where they can still work, and they can still, for example, Yayoi Kusama, she is a great example of this. She lives in an institution in Japan, and that's because she has the privilege of being able to afford it. So that was basically what my dissertation was about, sort of the notion that these artists deserve support, these artists deserve safe places to practice, and basically showing that there isn't that availability anymore. So that was basically my dissertation.
That's really interesting, and it's interesting the topic of being able to do art if you can afford it, and if you know,
Yeah.
it should be for everybody, and as well, I suppose how in some recent years any sort of creative or artistry tended to be a bit devalued by the government, I think. And
Oh yeah, especially during the pandemic.
yeah, massively.
Yeah, that if you had a creative job, if you were in the creative industries, you were told to retrain, which I thought was ridiculous, because the posters that said these things were created by graphic designers,
Yeah,
were created by photographers, and it's just bizarre.
it's crazy. And you know, going back to lockdown, it's such a difficult time for so many people, and I think it was the power of creative things or art forms that really got people through. You know, they'd be listening to music, they'd be reading books, they'd be, you know, identifying with artworks and stuff or whatever. And
Yeah, baking
and
banana bread,
yeah,
all
it's,
sorts.
it's funny, isn't it? It's eye-opening. So, where do you see yourself in 5 years, would you say?
So in 5 years, I would absolutely love to have my own organisation that basically gives art opportunities to disadvantaged groups, to members of the community that would not necessarily have the availability to have these opportunities. I've found sort of through my experience of creating art, through exhibiting art, through sort of networking, it's not really a case of what you know anymore, it's a case of who you know. And it's giving people that opportunity, just to a foot in the door, if they want to become an art practitioner, and if they are from, let's say, low-income families, or they're from, you know, areas that are sort of left behind in terms of funding, then I just feel like it's so important for there to be, you know, an organisation there that can really pick them up and say, let's get you going, let's give you some funding, let's set you on your way. So that's basically what I really want to do in my future. I want to start by working with communities. My work is very based off sort of issues and topics that are really affecting communities now anyway, so I do feel like it'd be really beneficial for me as well to have all these points of view and to work with people from all backgrounds, because then my own artwork will really sort of be able to cover a wide range of people instead of just my own experiences. But fundamentally, you know, like I said, I really wanted to go down the art therapy route, but I just felt the more I was working with sort of communities, the more I was looking at things, I realised the people that would really benefit the most from art therapy are people that won't even know what art therapy is. They're people, you know, in the community. So I just wanted to try my best to sort of engage a career out of this. So being able to, like I said, opportunities for people that wouldn't necessarily have them if, you know, like they didn't go to university and things like that. Something that is now very terrifying for people because of how much it costs, you know, the fees, the maintenance loans, you know, there's no grants anymore. And I think that does really put a lot of people off. So I think, yeah, if I can do that, if I can work with communities and make a positive impact, then that would be great. I would be very happy.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, thank you so much, Hannah, for coming on and for talking to us about this. I've thoroughly enjoyed getting to know more about it. It's been great. So yeah, thank you for tuning in to this episode of In Focus. I've been Ben, and we will see you next time. Thank you very much.
So my body of work at the minute is a series of 3 paintings. They're all 6 by 4 foot in scale. They're all completed in acrylic paint, and each canvas I built by hand as well, which is a process that I've really begun to enjoy doing. This painting here, it's not titled yet, none of them are, but this is the first one that I completed. It was the first idea I had of the series, and it's basically just depicting a usual living room scene, but in a landscape that I would have typically painted before I did this work. So these mountains, these hills, for example, I've took reference from when I was up in Glencoe in Scotland recently. That was the inspiration for these. But yeah, I just wanted to really factor in sort of everyday life in this landscape and make sort of the non-surreal look surreal just due to placement. So we have aspects here of cost of living. So we've got the hot water bottle that everyone really needed over winter. We've got sort of the games and the PlayStation, sort of staying at home and being able to entertain yourself instead of going out. We've got the fridge, and it's completely barren apart from, which is something that I included as a bit of a joke, we've got half an avocado, just sort of reference to everyone, sort of the boomer sort of idea of, oh, if you didn't buy that avocado, you could afford a mortgage, sort of narrative. So we also have like smoking, sort of the idea of, oh, because the person smokes, they should be able to afford to live, and it's like, well, no, everyone should be able to do what they want, you know, and still be able to afford to live. So yeah, we've just got all these different aspects. That sofa is actually my childhood sofa. I wanted to just include that, as well as the old TV, just sort of the idea of we're going back in time, the way society is just sort of reverting back and everything. Just we're not progressing, in my opinion. So that was basically the idea of this painting. So this is the second painting that I completed in the series. This is predominantly just looking at the cost of food prices and not being able to afford sort of things on the shelves, but then I wanted to sort of highlight the fact that sort of takeaways and sort of junk food hasn't increased as much in price as sort of these items. So we've got things like we've got nappies, we've got Heinz beans, we've got, you know, bottled water, we've got cards, and I really wanted to include this fridge here, which is these ice lollies, and all the ice lollies are still there because as a parent, when you've took your child out for a big day out and it's cost you about £100 in total to take them out, and then at the end of the day there's the question, can we get an ice cream? And as a parent living in the cost of living crisis, that to you is just like, oh god, it's another expense, and there's anxiety there, and I wanted to just include that just because of my experience. So yeah, and then we've got obviously the Amazon boxes and consumerism, we've got vending machines, takeaway bags and things like that, and I just wanted to paint this sort of picture of, you know, the landscapes getting eaten away due to all this sort of natural foliage and things coming in and breaking this sort of man-made situation down. But at the end of the day, even though we as sort of humanity in this painting has dissolved, the things on the shelves still remain because no one, even in the end, we couldn't afford them. And it's kind of poking fun at sort of how ridiculous the situation is anyway. Just the fact that, you know, these things are created in our society. They're not they're not natural things, they're man-made problems. And I wanted to really sort of put it almost like this is a ruin of the society that we're in, that we're leaving behind for the future generations. So that was the idea for that one. And then this painting here isn't finished, it's a work in progress. I should be having it done in the next week or so, but this is a scene where I've referenced Manchester Canal System. It's an area that I spend a lot of my time. I really enjoy film photography just as a hobby, so I spend a lot of my time in Manchester taking photos of spots, and basically, the Manchester Canal really sort of drew me in just due to the water. I always include water in every single one of my paintings. In all three of these paintings there is water. So I wanted this to kind of be the base point where everything starts. So it's like the start of, you know, all the built up community and everything sort of begins here, and then as the paintings carry on, the water sort of goes through and everything sort of becomes dislodged. So when you look at my painting of the living room scene, it's just parts and fragments of a house, but as you get close to the city, it's these big buildings and everything's built up. So I just wanted to sort of do that as like a passing through sort of time and some travelling. But my main focus of this was to sort of look at the homelessness situation, to look at, you know, the way sort of urban landscapes have been built up and built up and built up, and we've put so much money into producing these buildings, into gentrifying it all, but we still have homeless people on the streets not receiving the help that they need in this current climate, of this social climate. And I really wanted to draw attention to that. I wanted to create sort of this apocalyptic scene, and for the audience to look at it and think, oh, you know, it's apocalyptic and these tents are people trying to survive the apocalypse, and it's no, those tents were there before. They were a part of everyday life. We walk past them every day, they exist. And this is all that's come after, you know, they still are there. So it's, yeah, that's basically the idea for this painting. But as I say, it's not finished yet. It could completely change by the time that it is finished, and it might look different, but yeah, I just really wanted to focus in on sort of my own experience with the cost of living and get it integrated into my work, basically.
What's it like being a resilient peer support mentor, and what's it like working on the programme?
It's really enriching to meet with people who are struggling a bit, and it feels really good to be able to give them a bit of guidance and see that it's making a difference for them. It's nice also because I'm a mature student, so it's been really nice to connect with people who are younger than me as well, and it kind of puts me back to where I was when I first started uni a really long time ago and started my art courses back then. So it makes me feel like I can relate, but I've gained some perspective since then. And so it feels good for me personally to see my own journey, that actually as you get older, you gain that perspective, you gain that resilience, you gain that maturity, and it helps level things out. So I think I can bring that to the people that I meet with, and I think that has been real beneficial for them.
What does your artwork discuss, and how does it relate to the workshops you've taken part in?
Largely my artwork has taken a big turn, and I have been working in mixed media and various different art forms to look at fragility and decay, and largely working in dementia. I don't feel that my artwork necessarily is reflective of the workshops that I've attended, but what it has done is given me a basis for teaching workshops. So I've started doing well-being workshops in art journaling, specifically nature art journaling, where it includes a meditative practice, a bit of creative play, and it incorporates the 5 steps to well-being. And I would say that is the biggest thing from the workshops that I've taken away, is always reflecting back on what those 5 points are, and helping people to connect with that through the artwork that they do.
What things are you prepared for prior to becoming a resilient peer mentor?
The workshops that we took part in were really good in that they were really comprehensive, right? So we talked a lot about the 5 steps to well-being, but we also talked about what our own personal journeys were like, what we might have been struggling with. And we got together in groups to do role play, and I think that was the most important. So we were presented with what could be real life scenarios of what we might come across as a support mentor. And some of them were sort of the extreme cases, but what's so good about that is that I felt then prepared when I did meet with the mentee, that I wasn't going to sort of be stuck and not sure how to help or how to answer questions or how to guide them. It was really good at providing us with all of the signposting information. I think we were set up to feel very supported by a big team of people prior to beginning the mentoring process. And all the way through that, it's always been an open door. If ever there's any problem or you're uncertain about something, there was always somebody there at the end of an email or at the end of a phone that we could talk to. Luckily, I think the program gave me enough of experience prior to that I felt pretty confident, and I very rarely had to use that backup safety of the people who were there to support me.
What is expected of a resilient peer support mentor?
As a peer resilience mentor, I think we are expected to really be good listeners. I think that is essentially, if you break it all down to the basic form, we're just there to be empathetic listeners. We're not there to solve people's problems. We're not there to take on their burden, but we are there to just lend an ear and to sort of hear not just what they're saying, but maybe what's underneath of that, and see if we can signpost them to the most appropriate area. And I think also give them certain tools that they might not have. So with my mentees, because I'm an artist, I like to use creative play as a way of breaking down any barriers that might be there in the beginning, and I think it helps people talk. So I would bring clay, or I'd bring little notebooks for us to have a bit of a doodle in, and that was a way for us to not have to feel like we were sort of sitting face to face across a desk and having a really serious chat. We could look down, and it was a way of sort of like gently opening up. And so I think really when you come to it, you just kind of being a friend for somebody at the end of the day.
How has this experience impacted your own life?
This experience has really given me some great tools to reflect upon in what is a very busy and sometimes very stressful life. So I'm a mum to 2 young children. I'm a carer for my mother-in-law who has dementia. I'm doing about 3 different jobs at the minute as well. And so what that does is those 5 steps to well-being, that to me was the most important thing, and I continuously reflect on that in my journey. When we were doing our training, one of the tools that they gave us, which I found really helpful, was to imagine that you're sort of sat on your own shoulder and you're looking at your own actions. And what would you think if you were outside of yourself looking at what you're doing? And to me, that's a really good tool to use in a lot of situations when you feel, especially in a busy, tired, stressful day, and you're not your best self. It's a way to sort of step back, take a minute, and think, gosh, what would I think of myself right now? So it's similar, I guess, to sort of counting to 10 and bringing yourself down, except that you don't have to necessarily do the counting bit. You're already kind of thinking about that, and that has sort of helped level me out in times when I've really needed it.
What's it like being a resilient peer support mentor, and what's it like working on the programme?
It's been an interesting journey. It's been a life-changing experience for me. I've really embraced the opportunity to be involved with the whole project, and it's enabled me to kind of deal with things in a different way, and it's been tremendous.
Why did you join the Resilient Peer Project?
Well, I kind of joined on a whim, really. I was studying for my Masters in Fine Art, and I got this email, and I thought, wow, this sounds quite interesting, and I thought it would help me kind of... I've got a teenage daughter, and I thought it would kind of help me deal with some of the issues that I was facing at home, and it has helped a lot, so yeah, that's why I did it.
How has the project impacted your personal artwork?
The project has really impacted on my visualisation within the art industry, working with LGBTQ plus communities and exploring mindfulness at the Tate Liverpool with Sarah Marshall has been mind-blowing, really, and it's given me opportunities that I wouldn't have got if I hadn't have engaged. I've got my second solo exhibition within the first 6 months of graduating, and realising that it's just been brilliant.
That's amazing, congratulations.
Thank you.
What's it like being a resilient peer mentor, and what are some of the common topics of conversation that you hear from students who reach out for your support?
Becoming a peer support mentor has really helped me engage with the different needs of individuals, and learning that a lot of the stigmatisation around different personal problems has been quite mind-blowing, really, and knowing the channels or places to direct peers to get additional support has been very useful.
What did the workshop provide that made you more equipped to being a resilient peer mentor?
Working with Growing Resilience, it helped me address so many issues, even on a personal level as well, that it helped me kind of deal with external conflict and internal conflict, and how to address anxiety with my daughter and anxiety with myself, and it's built my confidence like tenfold.
Do you think the scheme works as a more casual approach to reaching out and talking to those who feel they need the extra support?
Most definitely. It's something that and now that I have kind of trained and developed and graduated, it's something that I want to take out in communities myself, because I feel that sometimes when people are put in a box of mental health, that they feel stigmatised and labelled, and I think if we're reaching out to people on a personal level, on a casual basis, they're more likely to open up, to talk, to explore, and to engage.
How has the training and experience shaped your own personal identity?
Well, I certainly wouldn't have been sat in front of a camera 2 years ago at all. I have met some fantastic individuals, and I've had so many opportunities to develop within my art practice, and also on a professional level, so kind of liaising with different networks, and yeah, it's just been brilliant.